I lost my best friend, but it was her betrayal that saved my life and gave me everything I truly deserved. Darla sat at my kitchen island, turning my favorite mug in her hands, wearing my spouse's Tom Ford cologne like it belonged to her. "You're stunning, Nella," she said, chin lifted, eyes soft in that fake concern way she did. "You're accomplished. You could have anyone. Why stay married to someone who looks like that?" She wrinkled her nose slightly. "Honestly, Orson looks like he lost an argument with a brick." The scent hit me before her words did. Tobacco vanilla. Deep, warm, expensive. Orson's cologne. I'd spent 3 weeks comparing notes and reviews before buying it for him last Christmas. $350 a bottle. He'd worn it twice. Once on New Year's Eve. Once for a company dinner in March. And now it was poured all over Darla on a random Thursday in May. I didn't comment on the cologne. I just smiled and pretended not to notice as she kept scrolling through her phone. "Look," she said, shoving her screen toward me. "This is a guy from my gym. Investment banking, 6'3", actual jawline. You could do so much better. It hurts me to see you wasting your best years next to someone so ordinary." Then she started listing what she thought were Orson's flaws like she was reading from a script. His crooked nose from amateur boxing. The faint white line above his eyebrow where he'd split his skin as a kid. His ears that stuck out just a little. His 5'9" height that she said looked shorter next to me in heels. The whole time, the cologne clung to the air between us like evidence. Darla didn't know that Orson and I had been trying to have a child for 3 years. That we'd sat in 2 bright clinics while doctors spoke in numbers and probabilities. That 4 rounds of IVF had failed. That we'd spent $80,000 we did not really have. She didn't see him when the nurse walked in with yet another negative result and my vision blurred. She wasn't there when he held my hand steady so I could breathe during hormone injections. When he learned 40 different recipes because my appetite vanished and food became work. When he picked up extra shifts so we could try again. When he sat next to me at 3 a.m. Not speaking, just being there, until my chest stopped aching enough that I could sleep. He might never have been on the cover of a magazine, but his loyalty had a quiet beauty that put any gym model to shame. That same night, Orson came home late. He kissed my forehead, dropped his gym bag by the door, and went to shower. I noticed immediately that his wedding band was missing. "In the dish?" I called. He poked his head out of the bathroom. "Oh, getting it resized," he said quickly. "It felt loose at work. I didn't want to lose it." The explanation sounded too fast, but I just hummed and let it go. While he showered, I picked up his duffel to toss it into the bedroom. A crumpled receipt poked out of the side pocket. Drugstore. Travel size body spray. Same scent as the Tom Ford. Tobacco. Vanilla. I stood in the hallway for a long moment, staring at the thin strip of paper between my fingers. The cologne on Darla. The missing ring. The new body spray from a random pharmacy. I didn't confront him. I didn't call her. My heart already knew, but my face stayed calm. Instead, I started planning. Darla had always been drawn like a magnet to whatever wasn't hers. In high school, I'd mentioned liking a boy in passing. A week later she was wearing his Letterman jacket. In college, she applied for my dream internship the day after I got my acceptance. When I got engaged, she threw herself into frantic dating, racing imaginary clocks, determined to stand at some altar, any altar, before I did. Her life operated on a scoreboard only she could see. So I gave her something new to stare at. I started posting about Orson more. Not performative, made-up things, but the quiet, beautiful realities I'd never bothered to share online. A photo of the surprise weekend trip to Napa he booked for my birthday when he knew I was barely hanging on. A close-up of the slim Cartier bracelet he'd given me when I was promoted to regional director. Snippets from the handwritten letters he tucked under my pillow every Friday, little paragraphs about us, about hope, about not giving up. "Must be nice," Darla texted under one of the posts. On another, "Some people get all the luck." And then, pointedly, "He never did that before." That last message stayed open on my screen for a while. Before what? Within days she shifted from concerned friend to something sharper. She complained that her boyfriend, Mitch, never did big gestures. She started asking curiously specific questions. What time does Orson usually get off work? Does he always go to the same coffee shop? Which days is his boxing class again? What's his favorite restaurant when he's stressed? I answered honestly. Not because I trusted her, but because I needed to see the whole picture. 2 weeks later, Orson broke. It was a Tuesday night. I was folding laundry on the bed when he walked in, paler than I'd ever seen him. He sat down heavily, elbows on his knees, hands covering his face. Nella, I need to tell you something, he said, voice shaking. My stomach dropped, but I kept folding, waiting. It's about Darla. I put the shirt down. He exhaled, words rushing out. It had started with messages about my surprise birthday plan, he said. She wanted his help, his ideas, his input. Then the texts turned into little check-ins about his day. Memes. Compliments. Soon she started showing up at his gym, pretending she'd just joined. Then at the coffee shop where he grabbed his morning drink. Then outside his office, saying she was, in the area. She told me you were cheating, he whispered. She said there was a guy at work. She said she could prove it, but only in person. When they met, she didn't show him proof. She tried to kiss me, he said, eyes filling. She was wearing my cologne. I pushed her away. I told her this had to stop. I should have told you right then, but I panicked. I was afraid you'd believe her before you believed me. Tears slid down his face. Orson almost never cried. I sat beside him and let the silence stretch. Then I reached for his hand. I already knew something was wrong, I said quietly. The cologne, the ring, the receipt. His shoulders sagged, relief and shame mixing on his face. That was the night we decided to stop reacting and start taking back control. We didn't yell. We didn't storm anyone's door. We built something instead. A performance. A mirror. A vow renewal. Not a legal one, just a beautiful, glittering story. We announced it at my company's quarterly party, where Darla had come as my +1. The room was full of co-workers in cocktail dresses and suits, music humming under the chatter. Orson lifted his glass during a lull in the conversation. 10 years with this incredible woman, he said, eyes on me. Feels like something worth honoring properly. I smiled up at him, then turned to the circle around us. We're renewing our vows, I said, letting my voice carry. Big celebration. After everything we've walked through, we want to stand up and choose each other all over again. I made sure to mention the venue, the designer whose custom dress I was working on, the $20,000 budget. The date. The live band. The secret honeymoon destination. Every detail carefully placed. I felt Darla's eyes on me the entire time. When I finally glanced at her, her expression flickered through surprise, envy, and something sharp I couldn't quite name. Over the next 3 weeks, she was relentless. When exactly is the ceremony again? Who's invited? Is Orson writing new vows? Where are you going afterward? I fed her pieces. Enough to keep her invested. Never enough to satisfy. The day before our imaginary vow renewal, my phone rang. Her name lit up my screen. I answered on the second ring. Her voice was thick. Nella, I need to tell you something about Orson. I ran a fingertip along the edge of my thumbnail, keeping my tone light. Oh. He tried to kiss me, she blurted. 2 months ago. I didn't want to tell you, but I can't let you stand up there tomorrow with someone unfaithful. You deserve the truth. A laugh slipped out of me before I could stop it. Not loud. Just a short, disbelieving sound. Darla, I said calmly. I already know about everything. The texts. The surprise visits. The mornings you waited at his gym. The cologne you took from his bag. Orson told me all of it. Silence. For a moment I thought the call had dropped. Then I heard her breathing, shaky and uneven on the other end. How long have you known? She whispered. Why would you plan a whole vow renewal if you already knew? I looked at my own reflection in the dark window. 2 weeks, I said. And the renewal? That was never real, Darla. No venue. No dress. No band. I needed to see how far you'd go if you thought you might lose something you never actually had. Her breath hitched, the sound small and stunned. And for the first time in 15 years, I had the upper hand. The week after the rooftop reception, Tessa turned into a one-woman wedding blog. She texted me every morning. What color are your flowers? Are you doing handwritten vows? Is Lyle crying when he talks about it? Be honest. I answered just enough to keep her hungry. We're writing our own vows. He cried when we picked the date. He keeps saying he can't believe he gets to choose me twice. None of that was a lie. Lyle had cried when we talked about surviving 4 failed rounds of IVF. He did say he'd choose me again, even if it meant walking through every painful appointment all over. I just packaged those truths into something I knew would gnaw at her. At the office, Tessa hovered more than usual. She'd stand by my desk with her coffee, casually sniffing the air when I walked in after lunch with Lyle. You smell like his cologne, she said once, like she'd caught me stealing. I smiled. Yeah. Funny what happens when you actually touch your own partner. Her cheeks flushed. She laughed like it was a joke, but her jaw tensed. Online, I posted what I'd once kept private. A photo of the little notes Lyle left on the fridge. A boomerang of him cooking while I sat at the counter in sweats, captioned, "Vow practice, in sickness, in health, and in burnt risotto." A picture of the two of us in a fertility clinic parking lot, his hand wrapped around mine, both of us tired but still smiling. 10 years together. We've walked through everything. I'd pick him again and again. Tessa reacted to everything within seconds. Must be nice. That last message sat under a picture of us at dinner, my new bracelet glinting in the candlelight. A little something he got me for saying yes to forever again, I'd written. Her reply stabbed through the notification preview. He never did any of that before. Before what? The night she broke, I was trimming my nails at the kitchen table when my phone lit up with her name. Again. I almost let it go to voicemail, but curiosity won. I put her on speaker and set the phone between the nail file and the salt shaker. Her voice came out shaky, already mid-cry. "Mara, I need to tell you something about Lyle," she said. "And I swear, I'm only saying this because I care about you." I studied my thumbnail. "Okay." "He tried to kiss me," she blurted. "A couple months ago. At the coffee shop near his gym. I didn't want to hurt you, so I kept it to myself, but you're about to stand up and promise the rest of your life to someone who..." I laughed. Not a polite laugh. Not a nervous one. A single, sharp, incredulous laugh that cut her sentence clean in half. There was a beat of silence. Then, in a small, offended voice. "Why are you laughing?" "Because, Tessa," I said, leaning back in my chair, "I already know about every place you accidentally ran into him. The texts about planning my birthday. The gym, the office, the coffee place on Pine. The cologne you took from his bag and wore in my kitchen while telling me he was beneath me. He told me everything." Silence. I checked the screen to make sure the call was still connected. It was. I could hear her breathing. How long have you known?" she whispered. "Long enough," I said. "Long enough to watch you pretend to worry about me while practicing your act. Long enough to plan an entire fake recommitment ceremony just to see how far you'd push your story." "The ceremony is fake?" Her voice cracked. "The venue, the dress, all of it. Every last detail," I said, picking at a tiny chip in the tabletop. "Fabricated for one audience member who couldn't help herself." Her breathing turned into soft sobs. "Why couldn't you just talk to me like an adult instead of staging some performance?" I let myself smile, even though she couldn't see it. "An adult," I repeated. "Says the person who stalked my partner and told him I was sleeping with a coworker. Who wore his cologne in front of me and suggested I trade up because he wasn't tall enough. Help me understand which part of that was the mature communication." Her crying shifted, turning sharp around the edges. "I was trying to protect you," she snapped. "You're out of his league, Mara. Everyone knows it. I wanted you to see you could do better." "No," I said calmly. "You wanted to see if you could take what I had. Like you tried with my prom date. Like you tried with my internship. Like you race-dated your way through college after I got engaged. It wasn't about protecting me. It was about proving something to yourself." She started talking faster, piling excuses on top of each other. He'd given her signals. He'd been too friendly. He'd not shut it down hard enough. She'd just been checking his loyalty. She'd never actually wanted him. "Tessa," I interrupted finally. "He pushed you away. Then he came home, sat in our bedroom, and sobbed because he was terrified I would believe you over him. He handed me his phone, unlocked, with every message you'd sent. That's what loyalty looks like." For a moment, all I heard was her uneven breathing. "You're really ending our friendship over this?" she whispered. "After 15 years?" "I'm ending it," I said, "because you spent 15 years treating me like a trophy to outrun. High school, college, work. Every good thing in my life became a challenge in yours. A test you had to beat. And this time, you tried to turn my marriage into your personal scoreboard." She tried one more angle. "You're choosing him over me," she said. "Over your best friend." "No," I replied. "I'm choosing myself over someone who clearly never liked me, only the feeling of being close enough to compare." I ended the call before she could answer. My hands shook a little as I blocked her number, then searched her name on every app one had, messages, social media, even old group chats. Block, mute, remove, leave. 5 minutes later, my digital life was noticeably quieter. Lyle came home carrying paper bags that smelled like Thai food. He froze when he saw my face. You talked to her, he said, setting the bags on the counter. Yep. I climbed onto a bar stool. She needed to tell me about the man who tried to kiss her. His shoulders slumped. I'm so sorry. I told him everything between bites of drunken noodles, how she'd spun it, how hard she'd cried, how quickly she'd reached for the "I was just testing him for you" excuse. He listened with his jaw clenched, chopstick still in his hand. I should have told you the second she started showing up everywhere, he said quietly. I thought I could ignore it and it would go away. You were afraid I'd trust her over you, I said. It wasn't a question. He nodded once. I reached across the counter and took his hand. Next time, I said, no protecting me by hiding things. If something feels off, we say it. Even if it's messy. Deal, he said, his eyes glossy. No more secrets. We spent the rest of the night on the couch, watching a home renovation show neither of us liked that much. He kept his arm around me like he was afraid I'd disappear if he moved. The next morning, my phone lit up before I'd even finished my first coffee. It was Rowan, our mutual friend from college. Are you okay? Tessa called me last night sobbing. She said there was some huge misunderstanding and you overreacted. I stared at the messages for a second, then opened the folder of screenshots Lyle had sent me the night he confessed. Her texts asking where he'd be. Comments about his cologne. The message accusing me of cheating with my coworker. His single, clear response, do not contact me again. This is inappropriate. I'm telling Mara. I forwarded the bundle to Rowan and waited. Her reply came fast. Oh. Oh wow. She's been asking me weird questions about your schedule for months. I thought she was planning some surprise for you. I'm so sorry, Mara. I should have seen it. Another ping. If you need to talk, I'm here. For you. Not for her. One by one, the story started to shift as people saw the truth. Kendra from my team stopped by my office door, eyes wide, saying Tessa had called her too, painting herself as the hero who tried to save me from an unfaithful partner. I showed Kendra the same screenshots. I didn't embellish, didn't rant. I just let Tessa's own words do the work. That's not what she said, Kendra muttered, shaking her head. I believe you. For the record. That night, while Lyle chopped vegetables for dinner, I leaned against the counter and said, I think I finally did it. Did what? He asked. Picked myself, I said. Over history. Over obligation. Over someone who would have happily watched my life burn if it made her feel brighter. He set the knife down and kissed my forehead. About time, he said softly. Outside, the city went on like nothing in our world had shifted. Cars moved. Lights changed. Somewhere, Tessa was probably rewriting the story again for whoever would listen. But in our tiny kitchen, with takeout containers on the counter and his cologne still faint on his skin, I felt something I hadn't felt since before the first round of IVF failed. Steady. And done looking back. 2 weeks after I changed my number, I walked into the coffee shop on Alder Street at 7:15 in the morning, the one Lyle used to stop at before work. I'd been avoiding it since everything blew up, but I'd slept maybe 3 hours and needed something stronger than the office drip. The bell over the door chimed. She was there. Tessa sat in the corner by the window in a stretched-out sweater and jeans, a paper cup cradled in both hands like a prop. Her hair was pulled into a careless knot that looked more neglected than stylish. The second she saw me, her back straightened, eyes bright in that wild way I remembered from high school drama. I thought about turning around and walking right back out. Instead, I went to the counter. She moved fast. By the time I'd ordered a latte, she was hovering just behind my shoulder like a shadow, breathing too loud, fingers worrying the cardboard sleeve of her cup. Mara, can we talk? She blurted as I stepped to the pickup side. I ignored her, signed the receipt, and waited for my name to be called. My hands stayed steady. My pulse did not. The barista slid my drink across the counter. I reached for it, and Tessa stepped in front of me. She looked small. There were purple half-moons under her eyes and a frantic shine in them that reminded me of the night she called from 6 different numbers in a row, begging me to fix what she'd broken. I'm so sorry, she rushed out. I've been in therapy. I wasn't thinking clearly. I messed up, but you know me. You know I would never. That's the problem, I said quietly. I do know you. She blinked, as if she'd expected anger, not calm. I set my cup down on the counter and really looked at her. 15 years of shared history paraded through my mind like scenes from someone else's life. Us sitting on the bleachers gossiping about crushes. The internship application she copied word for word. The time she accidentally told my ex something I'd said in confidence. It was like a mosaic I'd refused to step back and examine. Tessa, I said, keeping my voice low but firm, our entire friendship has been a competition you never told me I was in. Her mouth parted. The barista pretended to reorganize lids while obviously listening. In school, it was my prom date. In college, it was my internship, I continued. Then my engagement. Every time I had something good, you needed to prove you could get it too, or get it first. This time, you chose my spouse. I didn't, it wasn't like that, she stammered. I've been insecure, and Kyle never. You lied to Lyle and told him I was unfaithful, I cut in. You tried to kiss him. You doused yourself in his cologne to make sure I'd smell it. You called my closest people and told them you were protecting me from him. That's not a lapse in judgment. That's a pattern. Her eyes filled with tears. She grabbed a napkin and pressed it to her face, smearing her mascara into gray shadows. I was jealous, she whispered. All my life, you were the pretty one, the successful one. You got the promotions, the trips, the projects, the ring, I wanted to feel special for once. A strange sadness bloomed in my chest. Not for the version of her standing in front of me, but for the version of myself that had spent so many years shrinking, apologizing, ignoring little cuts because I didn't want to lose the only friend who'd been there since I was a teenager. I can understand feeling inadequate, I said. I've felt it plenty. That doesn't excuse trying to wreck my life. I don't hate you. I just can't trust you. And I will not keep someone in my orbit who looks at my happiness like it's a prize to steal. She reached for my arm, fingers closing on my sleeve. James isn't even that great, she blurted, voice rising. You're making a mistake choosing him over me. Any woman would want someone who actually looks. I pulled my arm back before she could finish that sentence. It has never been about his looks, I said, suddenly too tired to be anything but direct. He held my hand through 4 failed cycles and 32 injections. He learned how to cook when I forgot how to eat. He told me the truth about you even though he was terrified I would believe you instead of him. That's what makes him beautiful to me. Her face twisted, not from understanding but from wounded pride. I picked up my latte and walked to the door. She called my name once, voice cracking, but I didn't look back. When I stepped outside, the air was crisp and bright in a way it hadn't been in months. 30 seconds later, Lyle's car pulled up to the curb. He'd been looping the block, waiting for my message. He took one look at my face. You okay? He asked quietly. I nodded. Let's try that place on Maple instead, I said. This one feels used. He reached across the console and squeezed my hand as we pulled away. A few days later, people at the office began acting strangely. Conversations stopped when I walked into the break room. A couple of colleagues gave me that particular tilted head look reserved for funerals and bad breakups. By Wednesday, Suri knocked on my door, shut it behind her, and folded herself into the chair opposite my desk. You're not going to like this, she warned, pulling out her phone. Apparently, Tessa had decided that if she couldn't have Lyle, she'd try to take my reputation. She'd been calling mutuals and telling them I had stolen him years ago. Her new story, she and Lyle had been secretly seeing each other, and I had swooped in and married him to hurt her. It would have been comical if it hadn't been so exhausting. I told her that doesn't even line up with dates, Suri said. She cried and hung up on me. She showed me a stream of text messages full of melodrama and half-truths. By that evening, 2 older friends messaged me asking if we could talk because they'd heard several versions of a story and didn't know what to believe. I refused to do reputation damage control one person at a time. Instead, I suggested we all meet at Suri's place Friday. I'll bring Lyle, I added. And the receipts. 4 of them showed up. Less than I hoped, more than I feared. We sat around Suri's dining table with cartons of takeout. Lyle pulled up his messages with Tessa, his original confession, the timeline. The screen glowed between us as he scrolled through text after text, her asking about his schedule, hinting about meeting alone, suggesting I was probably seeing someone at work anyway. One of our friends, Rhea, went pale. She told me you'd been distant for months and she was worried you were going to leave him, she said to me. I believed her. Another, Emery, stared at the phone, then shook his head. I feel foolish, he admitted. She called me crying the night Kyle left. I thought, he stopped and exhaled. I should have trusted you. It's all right, I said, even though a part of me wanted to ask why 15 years of knowing me weighed less than one dramatic phone call. You know now. That's enough. On the drive home, Lyle said quietly, anyone who only believes the loudest voice in the room probably shouldn't have a front row seat in our lives. He was right. 3 weeks later, I sat in my counselor's office on a rainy afternoon, twisting a tissue in my hands. We'd been working together through the worst of the IVF grief, now she asked gently how I was processing the friendship ending. I started to say I felt relieved. The word made it halfway out of my mouth before something broke loose. The next thing I knew, I was crying so hard my shoulders shook. I wasted 15 years, I managed between breaths. I thought we were, something we were never actually. My counselor waited until my breathing leveled out. You're grieving, she said. Not the person Tessa is, but the person you believed she was. That landed in my chest with a strange clarity. We talked about loyalty, about how many times I had swept red flags under the rug because history felt heavy. How often I'd accepted small betrayals because the alternative was starting over with no one who remembered the younger version of me. It's okay to mourn her, she said. It's also okay to be grateful she's no longer close enough to keep hurting you. For the first time since the night of all those desperate voicemails, I walked out of her office feeling less like a victim of a tangled situation and more like a person who had made a hard, healthy choice. The universe, apparently, had more closure in mind. About a month later, Suri dropped into my office with that particular expression that meant news. She perched on the edge of the chair, phone already in hand. Tessa got let go from the bank, she said softly. The story, repeated misunderstandings with a coworker. Showing up at his desk after he'd asked her not to. Messages at odd hours. Following him to lunch despite polite refusals. He finally went to HR. When they investigated, they found prior complaints with eerily similar patterns. They cut ties immediately. I stared at the screenshots. My first reaction wasn't triumph. It was a heavy, complicated sadness. This is what she does, I said, more to myself than to Suri. It was never about Lyle. It's anyone who says no. That doesn't make what she did to you less wrong, Suri replied. But it does mean her life going sideways is about her choices, not your existence. I nodded. She was right. Consequences had finally caught up with her, and for once, I hadn't lifted a finger to steer them. About that time, my supervisor called me into a glass-walled conference room with a view of the river. I braced myself for more talk about restructuring. Instead, he slid a folder across the table with a new title at the top, Regional Vice Director. More responsibility. A serious raise. There was one catch, the role had to be based in the Bay. San Abner, he said. We're expanding the office out there. I'd like you to helm it. My heart thumped against my ribs. A new city. New colleagues. New streets where no one had ever heard Tessa's version of events. Can I talk it over with my spouse? I asked. Of course, he said. Take a few days. That night, Lyle and I sat on the floor with pizza boxes between us and the map app open on my tablet. We listed pros and cons like we always did when something big was on the line. His career could shift, fitness is needed everywhere. My promotion would set us up financially in a way that might even give us another shot at treatment someday. We'd be leaving everyone we know, I said quietly. He traced a circle around the digital bay with his finger. And all of this, he said, wouldn't come with 6 different versions of our lives from people who weren't in the room. He had a point. We could use a clean start, he added. A place where we're just, us. No history warped by anybody else's insecurity. 3 days later, I accepted the promotion. 8 weeks after that, security called from the lobby. There's someone downstairs asking for you, the guard said. Name's Tessa. For a moment, I considered saying no. Then I thought of standing in a different city with that conversation unfinished, wondering what she might have said. I told him I'd be down for 10 minutes, no more. She was sitting on one of the leather chairs near the front windows, hands twisted in her lap. Up close, the change was jarring. She looked older, not in years but in the way people look when life has been pushing them in the same direction and they keep refusing to step aside. She stood when she saw me, eyes filling instantly. I heard you're moving, she said, voice thin. Suri posted a photo of your goodbye cake. I am, I said. Soon. I'm in counseling, she rushed on. Real counseling. I'm learning things about myself. I know I hurt you. I know what I did was wrong. I miss you. I miss us. Could we try again? Start over? The lobby hummed around us, phones ringing, doors swishing, people passing with coffee in hand. It felt oddly symbolic, standing at the threshold between floors and exits. I'm glad you're getting help, I said, and meant it. I hope you keep going. I hope you build something good from it. Her eyes shone with fragile hope. So we can? No, I said gently. We can't go back. Too much happened. Too much of our history was built on you trying to win a race I never agreed to run. She flinched. I don't wish you harm, I added. But I'm done sacrificing my safety so someone else doesn't have to face their own reflection. Tessa's face crumpled. She reached for my sleeve, but I stepped back. I have to pack, I said. I genuinely hope the next version of you gets the piece you've been chasing. I turned toward the elevators. As the doors closed, I saw her sink back onto the chair, shoulders shaken by silent sobs. For the first time, I didn't feel responsible for them. That night, Lyle and I sat in a living room full of half-filled boxes and open drawers. He held up a chipped mug I recognized instantly, the one Tessa had used on that Thursday morning in May, when she sat in my kitchen wearing my spouse's cologne and smiling like a cat with cream. Keep or toss, he asked. I took it from him, weighed it in my hand for half a second, then dropped it straight into the trash bag. Toss, I said. Some things don't get to come with us. He grinned, tied off the bag, and hauled it to the door. When he came back, he sat beside me on the floor, back against the empty bookshelf. You ready? He asked. I looked around at the dismantled room, at the blank spots on the walls where frames had hung, at the neat stack of labeled boxes, kitchen, books, memories. Yes, I said. And for the first time in a long time, there was no hesitation under the word at all. We moved to San Abner on a mild October morning, the sky washed in pale gold and the air smelling faintly of salt. As we drove across the ridge into the city, the skyline came into view, sleek towers, wide water, sun flashing off windows like camera flashes. It felt like stepping into a blank page. Our new apartment sat on a hill overlooking the harbor. Tall windows. Quiet street. A fresh start without a single echo of our old life. For the first week, Lyle and I unpacked slowly, intentionally. We hung photos of us, not our wedding photos, not the polished portraits we'd used for holiday cards, but the candid ones, us laughing on a hike, us drenched from a surprise rainstorm, him holding me after a failed embryo transfer when I didn't want anyone else to see my face. We chose new dishes, new rugs, new lamps. Nothing carried her fingerprints or borrowed perfume. Everything felt lighter, like our home finally reflected us without the shadow of someone who always wanted to slip into my life and wear it like a costume. Lyle found work faster than either of us expected. A tech startup needed a wellness coordinator, and his interview lasted 15 minutes before they offered him the role. He came home beaming, holding an onboarding folder like a prize. That was fast, I said, smiling into his shoulder. They seem to care more about who I am than how I look, he said with an awkward laugh, though not really joking. I cupped his face in both hands. That's because they're smart. He kissed my palm in that gentle, grounding way he did whenever I said something he didn't know how to respond to. My role as regional vice director began that same week. The office was clean and bright, and no one knew me beyond the bio they'd seen in their inbox. No gossip. No rumors. No backstory. It was exactly what I needed. The people were professional, supportive, uninterested in anything except doing their jobs well. In meetings, they looked at me with curiosity, not preconceived biases. It felt like breathing clean air after years of smoke. For the first time in months, I realized I wasn't waiting for my phone to buzz with some new spiral of drama. Silence was peaceful, not foreboding. We found a fertility clinic tucked near the water, a place known for cases like ours. The doctor was warm, reassuring, and blunt in a way I appreciated. She reviewed our records, 4 failed cycles, all the hormone swings and heartbreaks. There's one more protocol we can try, she said. More monitoring, more intensity. But if anything works, it will be this. We told her we needed time. She nodded as if she already knew that would be our answer. At home, Lyle and I sat on the floor of our still bare living room, legs tangled, laptops open. If we do this, I said softly, we do it without desperation. Without everything riding on one outcome. We do it with hope, he corrected. Not expectation. I leaned my head against his shoulder. Yes. That. We made a pact, one final attempt. If it failed, we would move toward adoption instead. No more extending our pain. No more pushing past our breaking point. For the first time in years, making a plan felt steady instead of frantic. 4 months passed in a blur of new routines, new coworkers, new restaurants we discovered by accident when we took a wrong turn. We walked along the waterfront every Sunday morning, holding hands, talking about nothing and everything. When Presley visited in March, she stepped onto our balcony overlooking the harbor and said, "You two look happy. Really happy." She was right. We were. Over dinner, she told me everything that had happened back home. Tessa had left the city entirely. Her job gone, her friends dwindling, her relationship destroyed. Eventually, she moved back to her hometown. I think she ran out of people who didn't know the pattern yet, Presley said with a sad shrug. I felt a strange tenderness hearing it, not love, not forgiveness, just an acknowledgement that I no longer wished her harm. She was on her own path now, and I no longer intersected with it. 6 weeks into the new fertility protocol, I woke before dawn, took a test, and sat on the bathroom floor as 2 pink lines appeared like they had been waiting years for their cue. Lyle found me crying silently into my hands and feared the worst, until I showed him the test. His knees gave out, and he sank beside me, laughing and sobbing at the same time. At the clinic that morning, blood work confirmed it, I was pregnant. We clung to each other outside on the sidewalk, shaking against the ocean breeze, letting the reality settle in. We told no one for weeks. And at 12 weeks, when the ultrasound technician paused and shifted the wand, I felt panic rise. Then she smiled. "It's not 1, she said. It's 2. Lyle covered his mouth with both hands. Tears streaked down his face. He looked at me like I'd handed him the entire universe. The pregnancy was rough, nausea, exhaustion, fear that circled my mind at night like static, but Lyle was steady through all of it. He made me ginger tea at 3 a.m., held my hair back when I was sick, fed me when I couldn't feed myself, and never once complained. His patience, his devotion, his gentleness, they made every shallow criticism Tessa ever said echo like nonsense. She had measured him in inches and angles, I measured him in love and loyalty. He won every time. When the twins were born, 1 boy, 1 girl, Lyle held both of them against his chest and cried with a kind of joy I didn't know could exist outside of stories. I captured the moment on my phone, knowing I'd want to remember that expression forever. The first month nearly broke us from exhaustion, but we clung together through it, taking shifts, sharing the chaos, surviving on caffeine and instinct. Some nights, I cried at 3 a.m., because I was overwhelmed. Other nights, he did. But we were always a team. Months later, when the twins were 7 months old, I received an email from Tessa. It was long, reflective, vulnerable in a way she'd never been before. She explained years of insecurity, jealousy, childhood comparisons, therapy breakthroughs. She acknowledged patterns she'd refused to see. She didn't ask for friendship back. She didn't even ask for forgiveness. She simply wanted me to know she was trying. Really trying. I wrote back 3 sentences. "I'm glad you're healing. I wish you well. But we won't be reconnecting." A clean ending. A necessary one. I closed my laptop and felt lighter, not triumphant, just free. On my 1-year anniversary at the new office, my boss called me in and offered me another promotion, senior vice director overseeing operations across 3 states. I said yes before she finished the sentence. That night, after the twins were asleep, Lyle and I sat on the balcony watching the lights ripple across the water. He took my hand, kissed my knuckles, and whispered, "I'm proud of you." "I'm proud of us," I said. Because we had rebuilt everything from the ground up. Not out of desperation, but out of choice. We built a life that belonged to us, not borrowed, not competed for, not threatened by someone else's insecurities. Our home was warm. Our marriage was strong. Our children were healthy and wanted beyond measure. Our friends were real. Our careers were thriving. And the past? It no longer lived with us. Some endings don't need vengeance. Some endings are victory simply because you walk away, and your life becomes everything someone else tried to steal, but couldn't. We had peace. And peace, I learned, is the sweetest justice of all. Thank you for watching the video, like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.